Therefore his arm brought salvation unto him, and his righteousness it sustained him. For he put on righteousness as a breastplate, and an helmet of salvation upon his head, and he put on the garments of vengeance for clothing, and was clad with zeal as a cloak. According to their deeds, accordingly he will repay. Fury to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. To the islands he will repay recompense. So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him.
Why are we going to rejoice in the Lord and glory? Because we're going to get our godlike status back. We're not going to be feeling the way we're feeling now. We're going to be feeling like a god.
I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High.
Because a God, a true God, lives forever. Okay? So we're going back to that, brothers. We're going back to living forever, being the true gods that we're supposed to be. And this is what's happening, and it starts with the elect of the nation of Israel, the chosen few that the Lord is calling right now to bring them back to that godlike status.
I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High.
Literally will be angels in fleshly bodies. The bodies that we're going to get is going to be of a much higher grade than the body we're in now. Absolutely. We're going to get those indestructible bodies. You know, bodies that are able to travel into outer space, because we're going to go in outer space. Yahushua made the statement, he said, in my Father's house are many mansions. What does that mean? That means other planets. We're going to be able to travel to other planets, and we won't need no space apparatus like you see Esau has.
I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High.
I mean, the ultimate destruction will come from the ultimate God, Yahushua, okay? Underneath his father, of course. Okay, he's going to be the main one to destroy Esau and his society, okay? But we're going to have a hand in it too, as gods. When I say we, I mean the elect of Yahushua, who is coming to gather, okay?
Shalom, back again with another lesson. Before I begin this lesson, I'd like to begin by giving all honor, glory, and praises unto Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahushai, Ba'Hashem, Rachak Kodash. I want to give double honors to my elders and apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who rule well, where I've learned this truth from. I want to say peace and salutations to you, Akim, you brothers out there laboring, pushing this word out in all truth and in sincerity, presenting your bodies as a living sacrifice, which is your reasonable service. I want to say shalom to you, Akwaf, that may be listening, and also to you, Israelites, that are scattered across the four corners of the earth. You may look like these other nations, but your seed line goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is the chosen seed line. Shalom. So, in this lesson, I'm going to speak on spiritual power. You know, I watched a lesson from Elder Apostle Tahar. Every word that the elder was saying, you know, it was registering with me. You know what I mean? It's just a beautiful thing to understand that the Lord, you know, held us, you know, in a low position. For a long time, the Lord has held us in a low position. And he's getting ready to bring us back to him. And that spiritual power is going to be unlocked. It's going to be unleashed. You understand? So, you know, as we watch the downfall of Esau Edom's kingdom, you know, we see it falling. We understand that we're getting closer to the end, you know, of this captivity, you know. as we watch this cursed society fall, we understand that, look, great things are coming. Great things are ahead of us, That's why we have to keep our hands to the plow and keep doing this work, keep pushing these words out, right? So, in the near future, right, you're going to start to see brothers doing some amazing things. Like brothers already do amazing things, in this flesh. But when the Lord starts, unlocking that spiritual power, you're going to see some amazing things, and it's almost exciting to understand that this is what we're getting ready to inherit, right? Lord willing, we be of that elect, right? So I want to get in the scriptures. I'm not going to make this a long lesson, but I want to get into some scriptures. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7 and verse 6. And as you can see here, it says, "For thou art an holy people unto the Lord Yahweh thy power. The Lord Yahweh thy power hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth," right? So the people that the Lord is talking about, these are the Israelites, the elect of Israel, right? The holy people, which holy just means set apart, it means separate. We're not the same as other people. That's why the Lord has chosen us to be a special people unto himself, right? And it says, above all people that are upon the face of the earth, meaning the Lord sees the Israelites greater than every person upon earth. So the Lord said, or he commanded his people, he commanded his men, the elect men, to go out to the highways and hedges and preach to anyone that would listen, right? Whether they hear or whether they forbear, right? So we can continue on. We're going to turn to the book of Psalms, chapter 82, right? We're going to go straight to the point in verse 6, right? So it reads, "I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High," right? Because we are the children of the Most High. We're special people, We're gods. We're like not on the same level as the Most High power, but we are lowercase, right? We're the children of the Most High, right? As it mentions there. Now, as we keep reading, it says, "But ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes." Now, when we fell, it's because of disobedience, because we were worshiping idols, we were breaking the commandments, we were doing all kinds of wickedness, and the Lord punished us for that, right? The Lord took away our strength, our power. The Lord, made it to where we didn't live as long. We went through all kinds of, downfalls. We came to a lot of losses because of our disobedience, right? But this is what the Lord said. It's like, ye are gods, and we are gods basically, right? But because of disobedience, the Lord has stripped us of our power, and He's left us to deal with this flesh, right? Which dies because we go off due to sin, the sin that we commit, right? The wages of death, or sin, is the wages of death, right? So through all the disobedience, the sin that we commit, we die. But the Lord's getting ready to restore that power and give it back to us. You understand? Which is a beautiful thing. That's why when, you listen to the elder apostle Zahar, going into, the scriptures or his testimony, it's a beautiful thing to understand that the Lord is literally coming back to get us, man. He didn't forsake us, even though he had every right to. Idol worship, committing spiritual adultery, all kinds of wickedness, around our people. And the Lord's, found that we're worthy to be redeemed. I mean, that's a beautiful thing, man. That's something to be, you know what I mean? To have a humble spirit about, to accept that we don't deserve none of it, but yet the Lord's still coming back to deliver us and help us out of this position that we're in, that we put ourselves in, right? So I'm going to continue reading some scriptures. I'm going to read in the book of Jeremiah. We're going to go to Jeremiah chapter 16, right? And we're going to read from verse 14, right? So it says, therefore, so this is Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 14. It says, therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord Yahweh, that it shall no more be said, the Lord Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, right? So what this scripture is saying is that it's no longer going to be mentioned about the fact that the Lord delivered the Israelites from the land of Egypt. That was an amazing thing that the Lord did for us. But, that's on small scale in comparison to what the Lord's got planned, that he's going to do. Because as we continue reading in the next verse, in verse 15, it says, but the Lord Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north. Now, where is the land of the north? It's Babylon, aka America, North America, right? So to read that again, Jeremiah 16 and 15, he says, but the Lord Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers, right? So the Israelites were scattered across the four corners of the earth, right? The four corners of the earth, everywhere, every nation we were scattered to. And the Lord's going to collect us and redeem us and bring us back to our land, right? He's going to restore us as a nation completely, you see? So as I'll read the next verse, in verse 16, it says, behold, I will send for many fishers, saith the Lord Yahweh, and they shall fish them. And after will I send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill and out of the holes of the rocks, right? So in Jeremiah's time, the Lord was sending those nations against us, right? The Babylonians, right? Because of judgment, because we wanted to follow after these other idols, right? These false gods, So the Lord sent the Babylonians unto us, right? And this was a judgment on the Israelites for the wickedness that they had been committing, right? So this is talking about how the Babylonians would, fish, would send for many fishers, right? So the ones that are fishing, he was like hunting them as a prey, right? Fishing for them, right? And then when that time come, he sent for many hunters, and this is when they rounded us up and collected us and took us into captivity of that time. But you can equate it with this time, because when it says, behold, I will send for many fishers, saith the Lord Yahweh, the Lord has woke up the elect. The Lord's waking up the elect, starting with our head apostles, elders, and elder bishops of Great Millstone that have been teaching his truth for decades, right? Woken up all the, the Israelites, the elect of Israel, and now you have them out on the highways and hedges preaching and fishing for the elect, right? But there will come a time where the Lord will send for many hunters, and the hunters are going to be out there looking for these elites and these wicked nations to render his judgment upon them, and they're going to have to fight against brothers with spiritual powers, you know what I mean? It's going to be crazy out here, right? So I'm going to jump over to the book of Isaiah, chapter 59, right? We're going to start in we're going to read in verse 18, or read from verse 18, right? So this is Isaiah chapter 59, verse 18. According to their deeds, accordingly he will repay fury to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. To the island he will repay recompense, right? So the enemies, that is referring to here in verse 18, is talking about the other nations, but it's also talking about the wicked Israelites of this time. You see? Because the Lord don't play around when it comes to judgment. If you keep playing with the Lord's going to see you, right? And this is why we say it's important to seek the Lord while he may be found, because when that judgment comes, he's going to take out 2/3. He said, judgment will begin at the house of Israel, right? So 2/3 going to get it. and then these other nations are also going to get it, right? So as we continue to read on in verse 19, it says, so shall they fear the name of the Lord Yahweh from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord Yahweh shall lift up a standard against him, right? So the Lord is not playing, right? The standard that it's talking about there is divine intervention. You're going to have these spiritual powers. You're going to start to see brothers with these spiritual powers, doing amazing things, miraculous things. The Lord's going to open up that tap to the spiritual power, and you're going to be seeing brothers with these spiritual powers, right? But as we continue reading in verse 20, it says, and the Redeemer shall come to Zion. And the Redeemer is ultimately the Most High, but the Redeemer that it's referring to here is Yahushai. Because Yahushai is the Redeemer that's going to be in the nation of Zion, or the Israelites, with the Israelites, basically. And unto them that turn from transgression in Jacob, saith the Lord Yahweh. So all the Israelites that turn away from sin and come back to the Lord and start seeking the Lord and following after the Lord, that's who the Lord's going to be dealing with, The Lord's going to protect them in that time, when they come in as a flood. Right? So as we continue reading, verse 21, it says, as for me, this is my covenant with them, saith the Lord Yahweh. My spirit that is upon thee, and my words, which I have put in thy mouth, shall not depart out of thy mouth, nor out of the mouth of thy seed, nor out of the mouth of thy seed's seed, saith the Lord Yahweh, from henceforth and forever. Right? So the Spirit of the Lord will be upon us, upon the elect, and it will always be upon Israel, right? So the Israelites that are delivered and brought into the kingdom, the Spirit of the Lord is going to dwell with them forever. You see? So I'm probably just going to get a few more scriptures, and then we'll close out the lesson there, because I just wanted to touch on, spiritual, having spiritual power, and the fact that with the spiritual power, it's going to be something like nobody's ever witnessed before, right? So we're going to read in the book of Isaiah, chapter 40. We're going to jump back to the book of Isaiah, chapter 40. And we're going to read in verse 28. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, verse 28. It says, hast thou not known, hast thou not heard, that the everlasting power, the Lord Yahweh, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary. There is no searching of his understanding. See, the Lord don't get tired. The Lord doesn't get sleepy. The Lord doesn't take breaks. He don't faint. Like he don't get weak, right? The Lord just he's able to just go. Right? He's able to do what he needs to do, right, when he needs to do it, right? So as we continue on in verse 29, it says, he giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. And again, Elder Apostle Tahar was touching on this point, right? Because he giveth power to the faint. When you're struggling in this life, right, sometimes you get weary, you get tired, right? Tired of fighting, tired of struggling. You look to the Lord, because the Lord giveth power to the faint. It says, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Like the Lord will increase you as long as you stick to him and don't depart from him. Do as he's commanded. The Lord can lift you back up. And I pray that brothers out there that are struggling, I pray that the Lord lifts you up. We all need the help, man. We all need the help, and the Lord's, he's here to help as long as we trust and have faith in him. We believe in him and do as he commands us to do, right? So as we continue reading verse 30, it's Isaiah chapter 40 verse 30, it says, even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall, right? So when you look at the youth, right, you look at youth for having that youthful energy, that vibrance about them, even they, after a certain time, they can get weak too, right? I know when you're in your older age, you tend to get a little bit weaker, a lot quicker. But the youth, they generally just known for having energy. But he's saying even the youth shall faint and be weary, right? It says, and the young men shall utterly fall. So as long as we put our trust and rely on the Lord, you know what I mean? The Lord's got us, right? We have to understand that. So as we continue reading verse 31, right, it says, but they that wait upon the Lord Yahweh shall renew their strength. That's the key. But they that wait upon the Lord Yahweh shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Right. So when it says they shall mount up with wings, right? It's not saying that wings are going to grow out your back. It's just talking about you'll be able to fly. You'll use them spiritual powers and be literally like Superman. You'll be able to fly like Superman. You'll have the strength of Superman. You'll be able to run like the Flash and not be tired. You know what I mean? Like this is the spiritual power that it's referring to in these scriptures, right? That I'm bringing out here, right? Brothers have done many lessons on spiritual powers before, and they go into a lot of detail. Me, I'm just going through the scriptures that I know, and I'm explaining, I'm doing this lesson based off the edification that Elder Apostle Tahar did the other day, because it's one of those lessons that when it resonates with you, you just want to, you want to also bring it out, right? So we're going to jump over to the book of Jeremiah again. And we're going to go to the book of 50, or chapter 50. So this is Jeremiah chapter 51. Right? And we're going to read from verse 19. Right? And it says, the portion of Jacob is not like them. Right? So when it's saying the portion of Jacob is not like them, it's talking about the power of Jacob. So the Most High, he's not like these other idols. So you have all these other idols that people worship, but our power, the God or the power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is not like any other power. There's none that can be compared to him, right? It says the portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the former of all things. So that means the Lord wasn't created like these idols were, right? The Lord is before all of that. You see? So that's why, it's wise to seek the power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because these idols that these other nations worship are as nothing. They're nothing, but it says the portion of Jacob is not like them. He is the former, meaning the beginning of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance, right? The Israelites are the rod of his inheritance, right? It says the Lord Yahweh of hosts is his name, right? Jeremiah is showing that there is no one, no other power like our power, you see? So he's bringing this out here in this scripture. As we continue in verse 20, it says, thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. For with thee I will break in pieces the nations, and with thee will I destroy kingdoms, right? So the Israelites are going to be used as that battle axe, right? You can imagine the Lord opens that tap, and spiritual powers come through, and you got a whole nation of Israelites, or Supermen, right? Or what's his name? Hancock. You got a whole nation of Hancocks flying around, It says in the book of Exodus, I'm just going to quickly turn, I'll come back to the book of Jeremiah, but I'm turn to the book of Exodus, chapter 15, and verse 3, right? Because the Lord is a man of war, you see? This is Exodus chapter 15, verse 3. It says, the Lord Yahweh is a man of war. The Lord Yahweh is his name, you see? So it says it in the scriptures. So when we go back to the book of Jeremiah, it says, thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. His elect are the weapons of war, you see? Because they're going to be on a whole nother level when they get them spiritual powers. They're going to be on a whole different level. So as we continue on, right, verse 21, it says, and with thee will I break in pieces the horse and his rider, and with thee will I break in pieces the chariot and his rider. You see, the elect are going to be out there gaining dominion over the earth, right? They're going to be conquering all these nations. They're going to break down their whole power structure. See? I'll break because horse represents power, you know. It says, I will break in pieces the horse and his rider. You see? So the power structure. It says, with thee will I break in pieces the chariot and his rider. Verse 22, it says, with thee also will I break in pieces man and woman, and with thee will I break in pieces old and young, and with thee will I break in pieces the young man and the maid. So that's the Lord, or that signifies, should I say, that all the nations are going to be broken down in front of the Lord, right? They're going to be broken down because, you know, that's that judgment the Lord is getting ready to release upon the world and these wicked nations that have kept the Israelites in subjection and been enemies towards the Lord. The Lord's going to destroy all his enemies, right? So this is Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 23. It says, I will also break in pieces with thee the shepherd and his flock, and with thee will I break in pieces the husbandman and his yoke of oxen, and with thee will I break in pieces captains and rulers, right? And then 24 says, I will render unto Babylon and to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, saith the Lord Yahweh. So the Lord's going to give that recompense, you know, that judgment, the revenge. The Lord's going to get it from all of them, you know. I just want to get one last scripture, right? And this is in the book of Leviticus, chapter 26. We're going to read from verse 8, right? It says, and 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight, and your enemies shall fall before you by the sword, you know. So you're going to have these nations coming up against the Israelites, and they're going to be, you know, all the enemies of the Lord are all going to fall, man. They're all going to be fallen by the sword, by the tens of thousands, you know. It says 5 of you shall chase 100. Can you imagine that? Like having spiritual power and you're just chasing, you know, 5 of you are chasing 100 people and you're putting hundreds to flight, you know, and then 100 of you putting 10,000 to flight. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be an uneven fight. And this is what the Lord is coming with, right? So with that, I'm going to close it there. I want to give all honor, glory, and praises unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Recha Kodash. I want to give double honors to my elders and apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who do rule well, who I've learned this truth from. I want to say peace and salutations to Akim, you brothers out there laboring, pushing this word out in all truth and in sincerity. As I mention this on to the next one, Lord willing. Shalom.